Hello everyone, Healthline on TVAsia Telugu channel. This is your host Varsha Singh. After 25 plus years of healthcare practice and healthcare experience, this was a great experience for me to understand that one thing that we all need to do as healthcare providers is to educate our community members. Healthline, the show, is an outcome of this thought process that when we are trying to make our lives better and improve our quality of life through health information, it's really important to bring different perspective of healthcare to our viewers. This is a special series of integrative medicine, functional medicine, holistic medicine, complementary and alternative medicine. I have this honor and opportunity to seek and find those unique practitioners who are practicing their unique approach, holistic approach, and treating their patients through homeopathy, Ayurveda, Reiki, acupuncture, acupressure, and many other modalities, which is not mainstream line medicine. These therapies are really helpful for those who are seeking an answer when they are told that there is nothing more that can be done about their disease condition. Today, we have a very special guest in our studio, Dr. Ruby George. She is a homeopath from India. She's a holistic practitioner now, practicing successfully in Australia, in Auckland. Today, it's our great honor and pleasure to have Dr. Ruby George with us, sharing her experience about her holistic practice. Dr. Ruby George is a homeopath graduated from Mumbai University in India. Now she is practicing holistic medicine, homeopathy in Auckland, New Zealand. After coming to New Zealand, she has received master's degree in business administration from Auckland University of Technology. So Dr. Ruby George is a consultant homeopath at Henderson Medical Center Pharmacy, Henderson, Auckland. Please welcome Dr. Ruby George with me, because today we have a very important topic that we are going to discuss. And you must be waiting to hear what is that very important topic that we are going to discuss with Dr. Ruby George. We know that we are experiencing COVID-19, a pandemic which is worldwide. And COVID-19 has some after effects that we are really not aware of. Nobody knows what are the after effects of COVID-19 and how the holistic approach and homeopathic approach is going to help community at large to deal with many conditions. So why we have Dr. Ruby George here with us? She is going to discuss the holistic approach to health, particularly to fatigue. She's also going to discuss her approach to holistic treatment with remedies, diet, exercise, and lifestyle changes. She's also going to use some warnings, and she's going to educate people about food fads. What is healthy for one may not be necessarily healthy for another person. So this is her individual approach to each and every patient of hers. And I am so pleased to have her here so that we can share her experience at our Healthline TVAsia Telugu channel show and learn from how she is using this unique approach to make lives better for her patients. So welcome, Dr. Ruby George. I'm so happy to have you on this show.
Thank you, Dr. Varsha, for having invited me and for this amazing opportunity to be part of this great work that you're doing.
I'm so happy that we are across the border, but what we are going to share is so simple and unique that anyone across the world can use it and learn from it. So let me get started with my first question. because every time I bring a guest in on this show, a practitioner on this show, we really need to know what's your journey and what is your life experiences that makes you who you are today. So please share your journey as a homeopath practitioner who is educated in India and now has a successful and such an independent practice in New Zealand.
Well, my journey into homeopathy was because the reason I became a homeopath was because of my dad. And like a lot of other homeopaths, I went into homeopathy simply because I missed my medical admission into mainstream medicine by a few marks, maybe a couple of marks even. And my dad was very keen on me going in for homeopathy because he was convinced that the homeopathy was a way to go. And that's how I finally got an admission into homeopathy, graduated, practiced for around 13 years plus in India. But like every other young homeopath who starts off, you are basically keen on finding the right remedy for the patient and thereby getting success. But little did I focus really on the other factors like lifestyle factors or food factors that could be triggers. It was only later in my practice, my journey, that I realized that, how important food factors and lifestyle factors are important as much as getting the right remedy for the patient is. And that was my journey. And somewhere along the line, to be very honest, I got very disappointed and disillusioned. And I thought, well, this is not something I want to continue because it was too hard. It was really too hard. I just thought because it is not accepted worldwide, it's not accepted by the general population. And it was quite a hard journey. So I even sidetracked to help my husband with his business. And that's how I landed up having a master's degree in business, specializing in international business. But what I didn't realize that my MBA was actually a great tool for my practice, where I learned how to market my practice the way it should be marketed. And it was actually a plus point in my practice. And after 13 plus years of practice in Mumbai, of course, I came here and that's where I did my MBA. And now I've been practicing ever since 2003 that I came here to Auckland. I have been in practice. And like I said, when I got disappointed and I even thought I would give up practice at some point, that was a point when a patient came to me who, was struggling with an issue that the surgeons, she was going to have actually a brain surgery. And she decided to try homeopathy as a one last try. And we did. And what happened as a result was she got healed. And the surgeon was totally amazed as to how her condition was treated. That put me back on track. And I realized that I have something that is so valuable that the world needs. And that is how I began to put my full focus into homeopathy, use my marketing tools through MBA. And here I am still practicing after so many years and a very happy homeopath.
Wow, perfect. This is exactly the kind of story I'm looking for. Your motivation and your determination. Basically, it appears that what you practiced in India, now you're using exactly the same methodology in New Zealand. And this is a success story. Many homeopaths who are practicing across the world, they really want to hear this story, which continues to motivate each practitioner. These are the patient stories and the success stories after you treat them. So thank you for sharing that. And coming to the second question, once you practice, you have practiced in India and now you have practiced in New Zealand as well. I would say it's equal, 13 years in India, almost 15 years in New Zealand.
18 years, going to be 18 years. So it's 31 years total of practice here.
Wow, that's a long time. So can you talk about your approach? You definitely have a unique approach and you have your own style. So how do you approach each case?
When I look at a patient, what I see is the disease, which is basically the end result of what life has really dished out to the patient. So I just don't see the disease, as the doctors would have diagnosed and sent the patient across. But when I look at the patient, I see the inherited genetics from his or her ancestors, which becomes a rich soil for the current condition to have manifested. And then I look at all what our modern lifestyles have actually, created in this patient in terms of the food fads. Now, people advertise different things on the media, and everybody says this is good and that is good, and we overdo it and have lots of it because for a period we all realize that we are, fed with by the media that this is good for us. But actually, in a lot of patients, it doesn't agree with them, and it creates problems which they fail to identify, nor the doctors whom they come from fail to identify either. So that is something that I look at, and then I look at the overall, their lifestyle in terms of their exercise routines, their underactivity or overactivity, and the social lifestyle, their relationships, and basically, I believe, I'm a very firm believer that, the kind of thoughts that you harbor, determines your kind of behaviors and your relationships. And that actually can play a big factor in, producing or creating the disease in your body. So I approach the case from all these different directions and finally come to the remedy and suitable advice to the patient. So for me, it is not just treating a particular disease, but it's basically about restoring a patient back to health, but back to an effective and a fruitful lifestyle. So that is my greatest pleasure because I see patients who come, who have not been able to function in society or in their workspace, normally because of different factors, and seeing them back restored is just such a satisfying thing for me and a challenge as well. Young people who come who have no motivation to study or no idea what to do with their careers, you see them going into directions not only healed with a better complexion, better looking, but also going actually back into their studies or making objectives and goals for themselves. So my consult is not just about the disease, but it's about the person and what he or she does with his or her life. Yeah.
So it sounds like you are not just treating the body, you are treating their mind and spirit as well, and you are rejuvenating their life as part of your treatment process.
Yes.
And I can see from the glow of your face that you really love what you do, and I'm sure that
Yes, I do.
you have changed a lot of lives, and that's truly
Yes.
gratifying for any
I
healthcare
think I
provider.
am. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is what is making you a special guest here, because this is exactly what our viewers want to see, that someone who enjoys bringing patient back to their healthy state and feels gratified while doing so. So, Dr. George, why are we talking about fatigue today? Why it has become such an important topic to discuss? Um, what's your concern with? Is fatigue also becoming an epidemic, just like how we are facing COVID-19, which is so unknown? I think this is such an important topic. Why did you choose it?
Well, fatigue, as you said, Dr. Singh, it is actually becoming an epidemic, I would say, because right from little kids, you hear them saying, "Oh, I'm so tired. I can't be bothered doing this." You hear a teenager the same morning, "Oh, I'm so tired. I can't be bothered." And then it goes on to the adults as well, and their performance in their day-to-day activity, like in schools and universities, or even at home in their relationships with their families, with housework, their social relationships, their friendships and relationships are all being affected as a result. The level of performance of these people, the kids including, I would say, who are actually super intelligent, but just because of fatigue are underperforming, and then they lose their whole self-confidence. And some of them just even lose hope because they have tried everything possible. And sometimes all that they need is just minor adjustments to their lives, or a simple remedy, maybe with the minor adjustments, and they're back on track. And you see underperforming people, with children and adults, likewise doing extremely well once they are well. So that is a reason, and I thought this would be such an interesting topic that would be relevant to everyone who is watching. And since this for young and the older people, and they will understand sometimes it is just what we need, simple things, simple adjustments. And also, COVID-19 has brought about, such after effects like you mentioned in the beginning. And I have heard many people say that they are suffering from lots of fatigue, unexplainable fatigue. And these are some of the people that I really want to help to get back to life as a homeopath.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking aloud. I would like to be energetic every moment of my life, because I can't afford to be fatigued. We really need to feel completely rejuvenated, energized, enjoying the life, not just sitting in one place and thinking, why am I feeling so tired? So, can you go over this explanation of what is fatigue? What are we talking about? Is it just general tiredness at the end of the day, or it is no desire to do anything, or it is just a physical symptom? How would you define fatigue?
Fatigue is just the sense of being tired all the time. Now, there are two kinds, two main kinds. There are different kinds, but two main types of fatigue that we see is a simple fatigue, which has an underlying medical condition, or it has, it's caused because of lifestyle factors, like I mentioned before, or it has mental health issues as a reason for, this kind of fatigue. But like I said, with little treatment and rest and change in lifestyle, these come through well. But as for the other type of fatigue, is what really poses a challenge for many, many doctors. And even for us as homeopaths, it can be a challenge where there is no particular reason. Nobody can find a particular reason for fatigue. There's been no kind of history of infection, or there has been no they've been pretty good lifestyles, and yet there is fatigue. And to the extent, but this kind of chronic fatigue syndrome, as we label it, leads a patient to a stage where they can't even work normally. They can't go to work. It is that bad. A simple exertion can make them so tired. And they just have either bedridden, or they have to be confined to a place. Well, in either case, both cases of fatigue. Now, when I have seen, in my practice, some of the reasons, especially for this kind of fatigue, is, when people are trying to be superhuman and do things beyond what they really can, and they're striving towards it, and that is what lands up in these cases. And the worst scenarios, especially when I look at it, the patients that have really come down with this kind of fatigue and chronic fatigue is when they feel they're doing it all on their own, and there is no one really to help them out. A lot of single moms, single dads, or parents who are struggling financially are just pulling it through, especially in countries abroad, where there's no help with serve maids or any of, easy help, housework help. And they're trying their best to make things happen the best way that they can. And they're just working day in and day out without rest, but with not just working, but with this intense pressure in the back of their mind. How will we make ends meet? How will we make things happen? And that kind of drains them down, pulls them down into the state. And then everything else around them becomes a quick trigger. So, yeah.
And there are also the underlying metabolic disorders and those chronic conditions, which are generally the cause of fatigue. So if you could go over those conditions that can actually lead to fatigue, and simply that fatigue also is treatable. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about fatigue, some of the symptoms, like I said, that some people have is ongoing body ache with no explanation, ongoing, dull joint pains, or, kind of no motivation to do anything, no energy and motivation to do anything. That's kind of fatigue in itself. Now, in children, we find like some of the reasons for this kind of horrible fatigue could be just nutritional deficiencies or metabolic disorders like diabetes, type 1 diabetes. Like I had a patient who's an adult now, but she reckons she was tired all throughout her childhood. And, but nobody thought it could have been diabetes type 1. Nobody tested it out. And only when she was around 18 or 19 that she went for a checkup and realized it was, diabetes type 1. So there could be underlying disorders of that kind of, of metabolic disorders. Then it also could be lifestyle factors for children, like, where now it's a fad where everybody, plays games, on computers or PlayStations, and they're stuck. And as a result of which, there's not much activity, which actually results in this kind of fatigue. And the other factors, in children especially, is food sensitivities can cause, fatigue. Now, this is something that I had long in my journey when I realized with my own children, when they started using additives to their milk, which, it's always advertised as, this is what gives you strength, and they show, healthy children running around. So all parents go and buy a big tin or a bottle of it and add it to their milk. Now, I realized that from the day I started using it for my daughter, things really changed for her. And I had to go through a long journey to discover what was really wrong. And a lot of our kids do have all those additives in the milk. Now, in general, if I were to say in a line, any food that is high in sugar and oxalates. Now, oxalates are little needly kind of things, that can create or sustain inflammation, to put it very simply, in your body and sustain it. And you may never understand why a child is behaving the way he or she is, but actually we are the ones who are feeding them these things, And, we would please a child with lots of chocolates, and chocolates are extremely high in oxalates. And the kids would complain of how tired they are, how drained they are. So these are some of the things in children especially. And with teenagers, I would say, and because of this habit of, watching a lot of cartoons and playing a lot of games, the kids don't sleep. And the improper sleep patterns can get them into a lot of fatigue and underperformance in school. And the other factor definitely would be the lack of drinking water. They don't drink water. As a result of dehydration, they end up with a lot of fatigue. And teenagers as well, we would say the same things, but a little more. As they grow up, the tendency for more things come up. And in teenagers as well, and young adults, a lot of times they are hormonal imbalances that have, like thyroid and other hormonal imbalances can really pull them down or make them feel fatigued. And along with that, for the consumption of too much of coffee, I don't know, in India, we don't have it so much, but I think now with the cafes, it is becoming more popular. But here it is, let's go and have a coffee. Coffee is like, I haven't had my coffee today. It's a great thing. Like it's a great laurel that you're carrying, you're having a coffee. Or, having, ongoing intake of alcohol in large amounts. These things can create fatigue as well. And the worst thing, what I really find, Varsha, is the social life of young people. Now, I'm saying not only young people, I would say even, young families and older families, some of us, can over socialize and pack up our weekends with all kinds of social activities. I have a particular patient whom I'm treating now for quite a while now. She gets the right remedy. She's, free of joint pains and body ache. She's a much better person. But the only thing I have not been able to influence is her social life. She packs up her evenings after work with social life, packs up her weekends, and she gets totally tired. And she says, "Now I'm so tired." I said, "Sweetheart, I've told you so many times. We have gone through this many, many times, but then in the times when she takes me seriously, believe me, she's a much better, in a much better state, and she can perform well, she can do things much better." So
This,
that's with a lot of things that I see with the young adults. And I don't know if you've ever how it is in the US, but I'm sure it is very similar. But
right now,
sunbathing,
mhm. Right now
sunbathing
it
is
is,
another thing.
yeah, right now it is, the social life is on hold. But I hear you. It is like the way you spoke about the diet and the additives and the computer games and how people eat, teenagers, how they sleep. Um, One message which is kind of emerging out of like your whole conversation is lifestyle discipline. We need, I think you are hinting towards moderation, control, a little bit discipline, kind of. We need to make a schedule and look at our life and see, hey, am I doing too much of it? Do I need to control myself? Take a pause, step back, and think about it, like what am I doing and where can I cut down a little. It can be sugar, it can be sleep. I mean, not cut down the sleep, you said you should sleep a lot. So a lot of
Sleep at
messages,
regular times.
regular time, the sleep hygiene. So you have in your explanation about fatigue, you related it with how we eat, how we drink, hydration, how we control our activities, daily activities, and social life. Definitely, we love to be with people, but if it is compromising our health, then we need to take a step back and think about it. Going further on the same subject about fatigue, I know that you are telling the viewers, check on your sleep pattern, check on what you're eating, check how many additives you have, and check on how much sugar you're taking, how much caffeine you are taking. Sometimes, having coffee can be just socializing. You are meeting someone, that's why you are having coffee. So, a lot of messages that someone has to really take introspect and see what I'm doing for my life if I don't want to be tired. So, I want to ask you, what are typical symptoms of fatigue when someone comes to you? I have heard that you listen to patient most of the time, let them express themselves completely, and then you diagnose whether they are having fatigue or not. So, how will you diagnose someone? What are the common symptoms of fatigue that you will make diagnosis that this is a chronic fatigue syndrome and this patient needs management for this tiredness?
If we're talking about chronic fatigue syndrome, is very different from the fatigue that we spoke about. Chronic
Mm-hmm.
fatigue syndrome basically has no relevant diagnosis to it, where all the tests come back normal. There's no history of infection. And basically, the doctors have done everything they can to rule out any metabolic disorder like diabetes or thyroid or hypertension or other things. And they're just tired, but the tiredness is not better by rest, where they can be very, very tired. And they're, like I said, they're restricted to their bed or they are, one place, simply because there is no, they are not better with rest. And any little effort to move can actually make them very, very tired, extremely tired. So that's how we diagnose, chronic fatigue syndrome. It's basically when the doctors say there's nothing wrong with you or we can't find anything wrong, and they're so tired, then the label comes on as chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah. And the other types of fatigue, like I already said, it has got body ache, light, joint pains. That happens in chronic fatigue syndrome as well. You have those symptoms, same symptoms.
Yeah. So, from your discussion, from how you described the common symptoms of fatigue, you said there is lack of motivation, a person has no energy, they may have ongoing dull body pain all over, they may have some joint pains, and they will be sleepy and drowsy,
Yes.
like tired. And it also has some degree of memory lapse. um,
Yes, they do have memory lapse. They can't remember properly. They can't remember names and dates, and sometimes they just can't remember. Do the simple things, day-to-day things where
mhm.
they have to use their mind. They struggle with it to understand. When they are studying, or when they are reading something, they struggle to understand or comprehend these things. Yeah.
Okay. So, how do you manage fatigue?
Right. Now, when I said, I one thing that I missed out was not, I was just coming to it, when I said about the causes, the other thing that I talked about was, what I want to say is very commonly, like in New Zealand, for
Mhm.
us, sunbathing is a big thing. It's supposed to be, it's a very sunny day. It's an amazing day. Okay, so our young people and adults as well, like to spend, children like to spend a lot of time in the sun on the hot beach, and that itself, exposure to excessive heat, either through the sun or even exposure to heat in terms of, having a electric blanket continuously during winter months, I'm sure that you have right now, or heaters, without having a humidifier around, or even a bowl of water, can actually cause lots of dehydration and cause fatigue. Now, when a patient comes, we could ask all these common things like, have you had an infection or whatever, all the other, think of all the basic causes, but we forget to ask about these environmental factors that can also lead to fatigue. And homeopathy has some amazing remedies for it. So when a patient comes, first thing, I give them a case questionnaire, which is actually a self-evaluation and a time to think. A lot of doctors would just see them first in the clinic, but what I do is I get them to fill a whole case questionnaire about their main symptoms, about other symptoms that they may be suffering, and they may not think it's too important to tell you even because they're only focusing on the main symptom.
Mhm.
And then there are other questions about, different parts of their body, like the head, eyes, so do you have headaches? And they will say, oh, I do remember, I do have headaches. Or your eyes, so this way, I handle almost all the parts of the body, but I get them to fill it out because it's a time for them to rethink and evaluate themselves and see what's happening in their body. And also along with it, I ask them things like, is there something? I ask them if there could have been trigger factors that could have, triggered this fatigue off. Like, were you suffering from something that really upset you when the onset of these symptoms? And what actually aggravates these symptoms? There could be trigger factors with like stress that could totally, aggravate and trigger these chronic fatigue, or what comforts you, all these different things. How is your relationship? How is your marriage? Have you had any financial loss? How is your relationship with your children? Or if they are kids, then how is your relationship with your parents? What really upsets you most? So they will come out with things, stories in school and uni, in different things. And if parents, they will talk about all these other things. But it's a time for the patient to start thinking about what they're doing with their lives when they fill up my case questionnaire. For the children's case questionnaire, I ask the parents, how much of time, quality time, do you spend with your child? And they can fib and say, how many hours, but, so what do you do during that time? What gives your child pleasure? So they are actually, even if they don't spend time at that point, they are actually begin to think, about how they should be spending time, what the things that they should be doing, and how the relationships are, evaluating the whole thing. And last but not the least, I ask what their food patterns are. So when they are writing it down themselves, they realize the amount of cokes that they're drinking, or the juices that they're having, or energy drinks, and they begin to see on paper for themselves what their food habits are like. And also, of course, last um, not really last, but I asked them about their family history and their past history. So that gives me a perspective of what is actually creating that rich soil in their body for this kind of problems to come up. And for them to realize that, hey, yeah, there are trigger factors, but look, you inherited these things from your parents, so don't blame yourself too much, right? So I always tell them, and they feel a little better about it. And then there's a section in the end of my case questionnaire that talks about list all the medications that you're having. So they list out all their doctor's medications, but they also list out the supplements that they're taking. And Varsha, you'll be surprised. Some of the patients come into the clinic with massive amounts of supplements that the health companies are selling out to them. And one of my first things is I look at it, the whole lot, and I say, look, let's get all this away for now. And maybe if you need it, we'll reintroduce it one at a time, or what you really need. But people are just taking and consuming supplements in tremendous amounts just because somebody says it is good. And a lot of times, these are the very reasons for their conditions of fatigue and other disease.
That's a great point, actually, because if you look at the supplements market, nutraceuticals, anyone can just walk in a store and grab a couple of them. And because someone was taking and someone and so told me that it helps me, actually they do not understand from the practitioner's point of view that they really need to actually have a blood work to see, do they really have a deficiency in order to take that supplement. So that's really a great point for many of the viewers, that even if you are taking a supplement, it is something that you are putting it in your body. So you really need to be careful about it.
So then after having done the case questionnaire, I actually study the case. So it's not that they are taking 2-3 hours to fill it up, but I take a couple of hours to fill it up as well. I mean, to study the case and to see where this patient is coming from in terms of his family background, in terms of his environmental and other triggers. And then I see the patient in the clinic, either at the clinic, or if the patient is not in Auckland, I see them online. So I have patients from the US and other parts of the world. So I see them online after I have studied the case. And then we come to a remedy that is suitable, and we prescribe it. I prescribe it. And also along with the remedy will go a meal suggestions. So because I'm not a nutritionist, I will not say this is a diet that you need to have, because I have another nutritionist who does that work. But I will give my meal suggestions, and I write there, this is only a suggestion. You can make up your own meal plan.
That was my that was my next question, actually, that other than your own homeopathic and holistic management, are you using any interdisciplinary consult within your system to manage this patient? And you just mentioned that you have a nutritional meal plan. And is there any other interdisciplinary consultation that you recommend?
I actually use, in New Zealand, we are not allowed to prescribe, order blood checks, the blood works. So I have to use the general practitioners to actually get all the investigations done. But I believe in working with the GPs or their specialists, because some of them come with lots of medications. And some of them, the medications, you can't just get them off immediately. So I work side by side with the doctors. And when the doctors see that the patient is getting better, they start reducing the medications themselves. So I never tell them, you get off this or get off that, unless, of course, it is very obvious, like supplements, I tell them to throw it out. But other things, I work with the doctors. I also work with physiotherapists who will actually help with the joint pains and a lot of other things that the patient may need. Yeah, so usually I use a physiotherapist, the nutritionist, and the general practitioners, the people I work with usually on a regular basis. Yeah.
Great. So,
and
Dr.
George,
George,
I didn't tell you once the meal plan is sorted out, the next para in my email will be basically about the activity that people need to start walking, people need to start running, do whatever they need to do. And every time in my follow-up notes, I will have that part, activity part as well, so that the patient knows that I haven't forgotten. So we keep a track, or on the habits, how many cigarettes or what they're having, things like that. So on the whole, it's a overall change for them. Yeah.
So you are incorporating a holistic approach, managing with homeopathic medicine, and then having interdisciplinary consultation,
Yeah.
and also managing their nutrition as well as the physical activity. And I also heard that you are also focusing on smoking cessation program as well. So it's
Yeah.
very holistic and also goes with the national guidelines of how we manage our patients and preventative medicine wise.
Yes.
It's a great discussion, really. A lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding about treating a person as a whole and not just the part of the body. And also incorporating a lot of other factors, which is family history, genetic history, if any history of autoimmune disorders, focusing on the nutrition, sleep, physical activity, and habits. So I think our viewers want to hear about all those case studies. If you can share some of them, your success stories, and I'm sure there are some very close to your heart.
Yeah, the one that's really close to my heart is a woman who came. She was in her 40s and she's a very successful woman with a career. But for over 10 years, when she came to me, she was over 10 years, she was not able to do much. Though luckily she held the position, as far as her career was concerned, but she just couldn't do much. She was in bed most of the time. She would literally drag herself out. And she'd been to many doctors and came over and I took the case as usual. But somewhere along the line, I just asked her if she was been using any heating, if she'd been using any electric blankets or anything, because she's in bed most of the time and she's cold. And she said yes. For 10 years, she's been using the electric blanket continuously because she gets out of it, she's too cold, she can't manage. And that was my cue. So with homeopathically, we gave her the remedy that was from overheating. And we took off the advised her to get off the electric blanket. And believe me, she's up and about. And now she's holding a position nationally that's nationally important. And yeah, so that is that's one thing that really close to my heart, to see somebody who's so smart being able to get back into her life and to her normal self, and also with her marriage and with her kids. They were all a different family because they're seeing mom all the time in bed, not able to function, not able, her wife was not able to function. But to see her restored completely has been such a great pleasure for me. That is
Wow.
one of my stories. Yeah.
Well, this is a typical example of correcting the environment. This is such an environmental factor, and nobody would think that my cause of tiredness is the electric blanket, not my magnesium deficiency or iron deficiency, or all those notions that we have, like that something is wrong with my body. Great example.
Yeah.
I'm all ears for the second one.
Well, the second one was very recent. We had a woman who was possibly in her 70s who came in, and she was also, just in one place. She's too tired. She wouldn't go out anywhere, and she had all kind of symptoms. I mean, different things, but she was very tired. That was one of the main things, and she wasn't functioning very well, and repeated attacks of pneumonia and other things as well. Now, when I took the case and I realized, among other factors, some of the common thing was she was taking some of the additives in her milk, chocolate additives in her milk 3 times a day, because the kids thought that is like it'll give her strength. So she was faithfully taking that and something else, and all that. And I gave her homeopathy remedies, suggested a meal plan, and took off those additives, the milk additives, the chocolate milk additives, and advised her to start walking. And the first thing she said, I can't walk. If I walk, she had a walking stick when she came in. And she said, if I walk, I can't do it, And the next follow-up I said, no, you need to do it for yourself, because you are not going to be sitting there like a museum, because there's so much for you to do in life. So one of the things that I do for my patients is give them hope, give them encouragement, tell them it's not over, there's more for you, whatever the age is, whatever. And believe me, the second follow-up that she came back, she didn't have a walking stick, and she was walking. She had gone and done her hair beautifully. A sudden new, flow for life and flair for life had just come back into her. And she's so much better, though we're still working on it because she's a very recent case. That's another one, for me to see a person walking without a walking stick. So that was another one. And then there's another man who came. Now he had many symptoms and many problems with him, right from rheumatoid arthritis to diabetes to hypertension and some growths, and he was on a long dose of antibiotics, and he had some peripheral neuropathy as well, because of which he was falling off. And his main problem was, as a businessman, he was not able to perform well because he felt he was falling all over the place. And he was tired, very extremely tired. Now, I didn't do anything different, Varsha. I did the same thing, made him think, prescribed the remedy. I didn't ask him to get off the antibiotics because I think he had to take it for a very long time, not just for 5 days or 7 days, because of something that was going on in his back. So I had to work with the doctors. I had to, eat my humble pie. I can't just get him off all the medicines that he's taking. But cut the long story short, this man stopped falling. And, I said, look, you need to start walking up and down, climb stairs. The older you get, we say we can't go upstairs and down. No, you need to start climbing stairs, coming downstairs, learn to walk again. So I had to show him how to walk again. Because sometimes when your legs are feeling lazy, you're just trying to go with your toes first, and then go and dash into the ground and you kind of fall over. So I had to literally teach him how to walk. But you need to go for your walks regularly. So he and his wife started walking regularly, climbing steps intentionally, and he stopped falling. And, he could go back to his business, got back, really into his business again. But all those, things, I had to teach him how to come off sugar, because when he's tired, he used to have a lot of sugar, though he's not supposed to have. And things that people say are very healthy, and, but it wasn't healthy for him. Got him off all that, but I had to substitute it with other things that he could, have and, feel good about. And that's another story that's close to my heart, somebody being able to go back to business and stop. He felt, because he was falling all over, he was giving up on life, literally. He felt, this is the end. I have nothing more. There's nothing anything can do, because people have told me, doctors have told me, there's nothing you can do about it. This is part of your condition. And I said, no, there's something you can do about it and feel more energetic. So yeah, that's another story.
Yeah. And I can see that the lady who walked in the clinic without the stick, you are more happy than the lady herself. And same goes for the gentleman. I can see in your expression. Great stories. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed them as well. They are enjoying it as well. So finally, I want to ask you, what's your message to all our viewers as a homeopath? What would you tell them?
As a homeopath, I would say, don't give up hope. No matter how difficult your condition is, don't give up hope. There is always hope. And take an inventory of your life, of all your conditions or medical conditions you're going through right now. Take an inventory of your lifestyle factors, about what you eat, what you drink, how you socialize, how much of activity. Are you going to the gym, or are you overdoing your gym just to meet somebody else's expectation? Are you driving yourself to an extent where, you're living to meet somebody else's expectation, maybe academically or work-wise? Or have you put in a lot of expectation on yourself? Relationships. How are your thoughts? Now, that's very important. If you get your thoughts right and you get your lifestyle right and you take the right homeopathy medicines, remedies, you know what? You can not only change your immune system, your children's immune system. And if your children take homeopathy very early, they'll be good performers most of the time. And you will strengthen the next generations to come with a better immune system, just through homeopathy and a healthy lifestyle.
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful message, straight from your heart. It was such a great picture. It's a great conversation and a lot of things to ponder about. Eventually, as human beings, we want to spend our time on this earth without getting tired, without getting being fatigued. So, thank you for sharing your perspective and how you manage all the conditions, not just fatigue, using your unique approach. I want to thank you for your time, sharing your stories, and all those advices that you gave. I'm sure our viewers will be benefited by all those points that you have shared with them. And they will continue to manage their life, or maybe they will achieve a better quality of life following your advice. So, thank you so much, Dr. Ruby George. And hopefully,
Thank
we
you,
will
Varsha.
meet.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on this show, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you. Pace your life too, Varsha. And I learned to pace my life too. And we'll just
That's a
talk about
great
it.
one. Yes.
Yeah.
So, thank you for chiming in from New Zealand, and wish you all your patients with much better quality of life under your care. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Varsha. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
So, dear viewers, we had a great conversation with Dr. Ruby George. She's currently practicing as a holistic homeopathic practitioner in Auckland, New Zealand. Many points that you have a lot to think about, and this is exactly is the foundations of holistic, alternative, integrative, functional, complementary medicine, which is different from modern medicine. If you like this episode about homeopathy and how Dr. Ruby George treats her patient, continue to watch our next episodes of this series, which is giving you to a different direction to learn about different modalities and different treatments, which are really not mainstream. Right now, your host, Varsha Singh, that's me, is saying bye. See you next time in our next episode of Healthline on TVAsia Telugu channel. Thank you so much for watching.